Everyone. Good day, good morning, and good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to July 24th, 2025, Technical Advisory Council meeting with LF Decentralized Trust. Before we get started, a couple of reminders. All LF meetings follow antitrust policy. There is a notice in the meeting agenda. We are all requested to abide by antitrust policies across the globe, and we follow that in all our meetings. And then all are welcome to LF Decentralized Trust community meeting calls. And we don't, we welcome all participation, and we expect all participants to respect each other, respect the diversity that we have on our calls. And moving on, we have a regular announcement that we have, and this is a reminder for all the project teams to utilize the weekly newsletter that goes out to a large developer community, and you can expect any announcements that you have related to projects or updates that you want to publish to be notified to a large developer community. And many projects have been using this for it and for announcing their releases, for requesting contributions to their design proposals and pull requests. And please do utilize this forum. I'll take a pause, and then I'll ask the team here if you have any other announcements that you would like to bring up.
Hey, Enrique here. Yeah, we released Firefly 1.4 last week. So maybe, yeah, David, I'll send you a message or something to put into the newsletter after the call.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other announcements before we continue? Don't see any. Moving on to, we do have quarterly reports which are both pending for review and as well as pending for project teams to submit their report for review. Now, I did scan through quickly about and on all the open pull requests, and I do not see any questions or concerns that were to be discussed. And I know majority of the TAC is yet to review these reports. I'll take a pause and then open up, ask the TAC if you have any questions or concerns related to open reports, or the project teams if you have any questions to the TAC. I know I know we received cacti report just before this meeting, so I'll move that up later. But yeah, any questions so far on any of the quarterly reports? Here, Hama.
Yeah, I don't have a question. Just wanted to call out that we already had a cacti Q2 report, so I submitted a Q3 report. So this should be Q3.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
There was already a Q2 report in the project updates folder. So I think the ones you submit in July are Q3.
Right. I see that happened with one more project. Yeah, I'll make that correction post meeting.
Thanks.
If there are no questions, I would still request all the TAC members to go through the pull request and review each of these reports and bring concerns or questions to this meeting. And I also request project teams to go through. And if you have any questions or questions to the TAC, to bring them up to the TAC. And regarding overdue reports, I did reach out to all the open overdue report projects on their Discord. I did hear back from Credible that they will soon submit their report. I'm yet to hear back on majority of other projects which are pending um, which are due. I did hear back on TOIP that they are working on their annual report. But that's the last comment that I heard, that Raman is back from his vacation and he's working closely with the team. And I know Wenjing, like you were mentioned in his message, that you were part of a committee which was preparing a report. I'm not sure if you have any updates, or like if we need to request for an extension from TAC.
Yeah, so the steering committee had a meeting, and mostly to really discuss what to report and what data is available. It's not a coding project, so the normal matrix A doesn't available, 2 doesn't mean anything. So they had a discussion, and I proposed a potential alternative template of the data to collect. And I think they're in the process of figuring out how to collect those information. But they're working on it, so that's a good thing. And there's a template to work with as well.
Thanks, Wenjing. Is there any extension or tentative timeline that we should inform to the TAC so that TAC is informed of it?
Extension as in like a target date. So this is I see the annual report is due March, right? So I don't know. We don't have a date available yet, but hopefully these are on active agenda, so hopefully it shouldn't be too long.
Okay, thank you, Wenjing. Any questions or concerns from any of the TAC members? If not, I'll take it as no. Then we'll wait for the project team to submit the report. So moving on to the agenda item, the discussion items for today. We do have, we did receive a project proposal, and Tracy did mention about the project proposal in the earlier call. I also saw a few comments flowing through the pull request. I'm not sure if we have the project team represented on this call. Hey,
Yeah.
Kevin.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey. I would like you to walk through the proposal, and we will then open up for discussion at the TAC.
Kevin, would you like to
before
share
that-
your screen, or do you want to drive, or do you want me to drive?
I can share my screen, or I didn't prepare any slides. So if you wanted to just show the proposal, the markdown document in the proposal. Okay, so the first part of the proposal is a bunch of technical information, and I'll just quickly go through that at a sort of a high level so you have the context of what it is. What we're building is a programming language. So the language is called Compact. There's some discussion about the actual branding that we want to use and what the name of it will be. So we're using Compact now as kind of a placeholder for that. That's what we've been calling it. Compact is the smart contract language used on the Midnight blockchain network. But we are proposing that it is a generic smart contract language for any zero knowledge proof blockchain that is sufficiently similar. And so in the context section in the proposal, just on the screen here, we describe the essentials of the programming model. It's based on some research that was a model called Kachina, which was a very abstract model of how a zero knowledge smart contract system would work. And Compact is a specific realization of the Kachina model. So the core ingredients are that the contracts are run off-chain with full access to private data. This is any arbitrary code. We use TypeScript, but it could be compiled to Rust code, or it could be compiled to Python or machine language or your custom bespoke whatever. There is also on-chain code that implements only the contract's public state updates and has no access to private data. And then the key that unlocks the fact that it's safe for the chain to run the on-chain code is that the transaction also contains a zero-knowledge proof that the off-chain execution was correct. And the chain will verify the ZK proof. And then if it can verify it, it's okay to run the on-chain code. So in the Midnight Network, we compile to JavaScript code, which is the off-chain execution. The on-chain execution is a custom virtual machine that we've designed for public state updates. The proof is an implementation of the Planck proving system that we've built. And then the blockchain verifies the proofs and executes the public part of the contract. One important piece here that is not really part of Compact, as part of the Midnight blockchain, is that the public state updates have to be coherent with what was performed off chain, and a transaction can fail if, for instance, you read a value from the public state and it's different. So part of the value add of the Midnight blockchain is that we do a lot to minimize the possibility of transaction failures for that reason. So that's the high-level view of how the programming model works, and then I'll stop there before I go on to if there's any questions. Okay.
Matthew?
Hey, yeah, thanks.
Hi.
Hi there. Yeah, this is a really interesting project. Thanks for proposing it. I guess there might be a number of questions from people on the TAC, but I thought I'd start with a really high-level one, which was to ask how you would say it compares to other technologies in the space. How does it compare to other zero-knowledge proof-based, even things like rollups or other things in the space? Are you able to just kind of say a bit about where it kind of fits in the landscape?
Yeah, I don't think I'm really well qualified to answer that on the fly. So
Sure.
a caveat is that I am not a Web3 person, I'm not a blockchain person, and I'm not a crypto person.
Yeah.
My background is in programming language design and implementation.
Okay, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a fair enough response.
Yeah. So I think that's a good question to ask, and it's probably a good thing for us to express. But I can't do it here.
Yeah, if it's useful, I guess, for us to put questions like that on the PR, then they could be followed up with asynchronously of the specific call if that works.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. So open questions like that, we can take care of addressing them.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. Enrique?
Yeah, great proposal. I'm really interested in this project. I wanted to talk a little bit about the second bullet point on the second list, the one about the impact virtual machine.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit more on that? So it seems like you're contributing like a programming language specification, but today the only supported on-chain verification like model is this, I guess, closed source, or maybe it might be open source, impact virtual machine by Midnight. I wonder if, as part of this proposal, you thought about having an alternative where you can actually validate this on-chain code in other networks. I don't know if you thought about it. That's it.
No, this is a good question. So I'll try to answer the things that were contained in that question. So first, it's currently all closed source, but we're in the process of open sourcing everything. So ultimately, everything will be open source, including the implementation of the Impact virtual machine. Impact is, we view it right now as a realization of the way that on-chain state updates are performed, but Compact is in some sense agnostic to how that's represented. The compiler obviously has to know about a different on-chain virtual machine or a different on-chain representation of state updates, but Compact doesn't depend on impact. So we've built it that way to separate the programming language for smart contracts from the chain. And that's exactly the intent of the Impact virtual machine. It's a custom virtual machine that we've implemented. Some of the concerns that went into it were that it was only expressive enough to support the public state updates that we could prove in our ZK proofs, that it was possible for us to give a good cost model for what transaction fees would be, so that we could prevent denial of service on the chain, but that we wouldn't overcharge for transactions. So there were a lot of design considerations that went into that. But it's important to recognize that the Compact is not specifically tied to the backend blockchain VM. It could be something else.
Okay, and this work that you're doing on open sourcing the Impact virtual machine, is it something that you want to bring to the LFTT, or you haven't thought about it yet?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's a different team at Shielded Technologies that works on the Impact VM. It's not clear if it's a generic component or if it's very, very, very specifically tied to the Midnight network and the ledger format of the on-chain nodes. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. No, I'm just thinking.
So I will say one more thing about Impact, is that we do view it as a stable ABI, so that we will, with semantic versioning, that it means that other tools could generate Impact code for the Midnight network. So we will have a specification of the Impact virtual machine, and you will be able to see what it is, and rely on it not changing between major versions.
Okay, I get that. I get that versioning. I'm just thinking from an ecosystem perspective for all the projects of the LFTT. It's always, I think, valuable when bringing a specification for anything really. We have specifications across the board, to have a way where there is some sort of execution environment within the ecosystem that can support that specification, instead of a specification where you have to use another, at the moment, closed source or another execution environment outside, right? Like if you think about the Ethereum Foundation, like the EVM, right? These clients and the specification are both open source, so in the same foundation. So that's where I'm going with the thinking. But yeah, I'll read more about it. I'm really interested in how those two align.
Thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. I did have a few primitive questions, right? And before I go into other questions, so thanks for the detailed proposal, Kevin and team. So my first question is the project proposal that you're making, is it the specification, or are you planning to contribute a compiler or a sample implementation that works with Midnight Network? So what is being proposed to be moved into LF Decentralized Trust as of this proposal?
So there's two pieces that we're proposing. One is there is a compiler, but we also view that there's some other developer tools that go along with building compact smart contracts. So in our mind, there is a compact SDK, software development kit, that contains core tooling related to compact contracts. This is things like compiling contracts, a formatter that developers can use, an opinionated code formatter, testing infrastructure, like a unit testing framework for contracts, and various other developer tools that go along with contracts. So it's the compiler plus developer tooling as part of a software development kit. There is also a specification of the language. We have an informal specification that is in progress, and we have also a formalization in AGDA. And those are also part of the so there's an open source, there's a repository that we're preparing for open sourcing. We're very close. It contains the software development kit, the compact SDK, including the compiler, It also includes the formal and informal specification.
So thank you. I do have one more question. I know you haven't touched upon that part. Your proposal talks about it in later sections, but I thought it
So
would
go
be
ahead.
right to ask it. So in terms of making this agnostic across, like for other projects to start adopting both the specification and start using all the SDK kits, do you have a reference in terms of like what Lego components that they should build to start adopting into their project? Let's say if Besu team wants to start using this, or maybe let's say somebody wants to build a support for this in Fabric or some other protocols.
Yep. Yeah. So there's three things that would really they would need to do. We generate JavaScript code for off-chain execution, and you would have to generate your own platform-specific code for whatever backend whatever off-chain implementation you had. Part of that is that there is an implementation of Midnight-specific libraries that would need to be re-implemented. So there's a library implementation. If you were going to target, say, Rust in your backend, you would have to implement a Rust backend, and you'd have to implement Rust libraries to support what we call the runtime. So that's the first piece. The second piece is that the representation of the ZK proof is a intermediate representation that we've designed, and you would need to either find a way to reuse that, as much of that as you could, or generate a different representation of ZK proofs. And the third piece is that we have a library that is implemented as low-level machine code for the Impact virtual machine. That is the ledger abstract data types, the data types that are available on chain, and so you would need to re-implement that as well. So there's a set of things that need to be re-implemented to target another backend, and we haven't done that implementation, but we've designed the system to support that.
So, yeah, thanks, Kevin. It would be nice if you can point a link to that design specification somewhere in the proposal. Thanks for answering. Enrique?
Yeah, no, just I got caught up by, sorry, I have another question, but I got caught up by the final thing you said. So the backend implementation, what do you mean that you've designed the system to cope with different backend implementations? You mean you've designed?
No, so I'll elaborate a little bit. The compiler itself it uses a compiler architecture that is called NanoPass, which means that the compiler consists of a number of small compiler passes that translate intermediate representations, and each pass has a different intermediate representation as its output. I believe the compiler has 30 some passes right now. There are two backend passes that specifically generate JavaScript code, and we've designed it that way so that if you wanted to target a different language in the backend, it would be something else. You could generate something else. And there's one backend pass that generates the ZK proof representation, so you could replace that. So we've designed the compiler itself so that it's only the very, very, very back end of the compiler that knows anything about the target. And then the implementation of the runtime that the JavaScript code uses is as a separate library. The compiler doesn't know anything about it, except for the names and signatures of the functions in the library. So that could be replaced. And the implementation of the on-chain state updates is also a separate library that could take the form of different implementations. So we've intentionally separated all the knowledge of the Midnight specific blockchain from the compiler itself.
I see, that makes sense. Yeah. So when you say you have to rebuild the on-chain state updates and the off-chain state updates, you have to basically build like clients to these different blockchain ecosystems.
Yes. And what we don't know is what hidden assumptions we've made that where midnight specific stuff has crept in. So we would only discover that when we tried to target a different blockchain.
Right. Okay. My original question was along those lines, but it was more around the private data. Can you elaborate a little bit more about? I know the private data. I think in the proposal, they're witnesses to the circuit, but have you talked about like a specification for managing off-chain state for that private data, or is that up to the client's implementation there?
That feels like it's outside of the compact language itself. So the compact understanding of private data is that there are foreign functions in some other programming language that you can call and get private results from.
Okay, I see.
It feels like management of off-chain state is something that you would want to be very opinionated about, and there might be different opinions. And so it's not, it feels like it's at a layer of the tech stack that's higher than compact.
Okay, I see. Makes sense. Thanks.
Thanks, Enrique. Matthew?
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the discussion about what's needed to work with other backend runtimes or other chains kind of leads on to a question that I had around what you see the activity in this project being over the next couple of years. So do you see the project being really just the language and the specification, and that it will very maybe slowly evolve with slight iterations in function and maybe performance improvements in compilation and so on? Or do you see it being built out to have specific dedicated implementations of chain specific backends or other non-JavaScript backends? How do you see the project kind of evolving in that way?
So the second part is other backend specific, other backends, different supporting different chains. That is an ambition of ours, but we obviously can't make it happen. What I can predict from my background in programming languages is that there will be a lot of feature requests from users, and there will be people who are eager to engage in language design, designing language features. So we're hoping that we have community-driven language feature designs. A successful model of this to me is the way that Python has a PEP process, Python extension proposals, where the community can propose and design features for the language. And then there's a core Python core implementation team that implements them.
And that's really useful, thank you. And so I guess it sounds like you see this project being somewhere where those runtime specific, chain specific artifacts would slowly be delivered into. Yeah,
I think so. And I do recognize that there's actually quite a high barrier of entry to working on a commercial compiler. It's not something that that is easy for people to do. But there is a lot of the other components of the SDK that I spoke about, that like developer tooling, that would be much better place for people to start being involved in implementation in the project.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Enrique?
Yeah, just on the last point around the complexity and the barrier of entry to this stuff. So you're completely right, Kevin. I do wonder if as part of the proposal would be interesting to add the maintainers or the team behind this. I think right now you only have sponsors, which seems to be specific companies or people of interest, but understanding a bit more the maintainers, and that will help us fit this project into the incubation level, understanding the breadth of scope the team maintaining this would need.
Yes, that's a good point. So all of the sponsors with a shielded affiliation are the main implementers and maintainers, because it is currently closed source. So it's not open source yet. The other sponsors we have a number of partners, and they all have a financial relationship with us because we're paying them to build contracts. And they are also some of them are also named as sponsors, and they're not currently maintainers of the project, but interested in maintenance of the project.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. I do have other questions, but I would like you to continue with your proposal doc.
Okay, so
Proposal,
the next,
Kevin.
good. So then the next section is that that I want to highlight is the sort of motivation. So when you design a programming language, you have to have some opinions and you have to be opinionated. And so we've chosen three different things that we think are important. One is that it's familiar. So we based it on TypeScript. And this is because our decentralized apps, our dApps, are written in JavaScript or TypeScript. And so the contract language is intended to be familiar for TypeScript and JavaScript developers, which means that it should be non-surprising. It doesn't mean that we're copying the language. We aren't providing all of the features of those languages, and we are making some different design choices. So the first thing is that it's intended to be syntactically familiar. The second point there is very important. It's intended to be safe. So the type system, it has its own type system. It's a typed language. The type system is stronger than TypeScript's. There's no escape hatch. There's no backdoor where you can get the contract to have a program that's not well typed actually compile. And we can enforce a lot of things statically in the type system. So another piece of safety is that we have a clear distinction in the language between private and public data. You can think of private data as being sort of tainted. And if you ever write tainted private data into the public state, you need to tell the compiler that you are intentionally doing that, or it will refuse to compile the contract. So we're also concerned about that aspect of safety. Much of our language design philosophy is that it should be difficult for programmers to do something to write code that doesn't do what they intend. And then the last point, if we scroll down just a little bit more, is that the language is restricted. So in programming language terms, we say a language is Turing complete if you can compute anything that a general purpose computer can compute. And this language is intentionally restricted. It's missing some things that you might expect to have. So we don't have recursion at all. We don't have unbounded iteration. So you can't say that you loop from 0 to n, where n is a parameter that's not known until runtime. Everything is a fixed size. All of our data structures are fixed sizes. And all of these restrictions are restrictions that are imposed by the underlying proof system. So the proof system is not a general purpose programming language. It can't prove general languages. It can't prove general programs. And so the source language is restricted in the same way. Are there questions about that, or should we go on from that? Okay, if you want to scroll down, David. So the components that we're proposing to move under LFDT are the language reference and the formal specification. Then there's a little bit of discussion of what we've already talked about, the pieces that you would need to support to target a different backend. I think we can scroll past this. I've kind of talked about all of these. There is this developer tooling, which is growing. We're building out more tools, and this is, as I highlighted, this is a place where I think that we could meaningfully have community contributions earlier. We've built the tooling to be, it's very much like the structure of tools like Git, where you have a command line driver that has a number of subcommands, and subcommands can really be anything. You can bring a shell script, or you can bring a Python script, or you can implement some Rust code or whatever to support a new subcommand. So we can easily add new subcommands. The tooling itself could support third-party subcommands. So if you were an organization like a financial organization and you wanted to have your own specific subcommands that were launched with the same tooling with a uniform CLI command line interface, you could bring that. Scrolling down a little bit more, we do have a compiler implementation. Scrolling down more, I'd mentioned a little bit about the ZK proofs. We have a representation that we call ZKIR. It's the zero knowledge intermediate representation. And this is like the impact VM. This is a midnight specific representation for ZK proofs. Though I think that other projects could use this or a variation of it. We haven't validated that. And this is, the compiler produces ZKIR as well. It produces JavaScript and ZKIR and impact VM code. An important thing that I'm very keen on is the last thing on the screen right now, which is open language design. So my experience with open source language projects is that the way to grow a community is to do design in the open. And so we ourselves are going to follow the same process that we would expect any contributor to the project to follow to change the language. And the process we're suggesting is we have something called a midnight improvement proposal process, which is open right now, and it's a way of proposing a new feature for midnight, but we're going to use it for the language as well. Before I go on, are there any questions about that? Okay, I think maybe that's a no.
Enrique?
Oh, Enrique.
Hey, no, just had a question if you touched on it. I was looking at the paper for the language for the actual definition of foundation of private smart contracts. I was wondering, I see it's from IOHK, which is the ones behind Midnight. I was wondering if you had any resources of where this paper has been peer reviewed by other institutions or it's been presented.
Yeah, I think I've cited it down at the bottom. It was in a conference. It appeared in the Security Foundation, IEEE Computer Security Foundations, CSF. I'm not in the, like I said at the start, I'm not really in the crypto or security world, so I don't know what that conference is like. That's where it was published. So Kachina Kachina, when you read the paper, is a very, very, very abstract model of how smart contracts work. And if you were going to actually implement that model, you'd have to make a number of sort of opinionated choices, which is what we've done in the programming language.
Okay, that's great context. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Are there more questions?
I don't see any.
I think that's a no. Okay, so if you scroll back up, David, there's a section on effort and resources. This is just a kind of a description of what we have right now. We have a compiler. It has a very, very extensive test suite. We're a huge believer in testing, and testing is one of the things that helps a community, an open source community, work on the compiler, because if you break something, you get a test failure. You have more confidence in your changes. And then there's some things about our areas of focus. This is what we need to actually target other blockchains. I think we can scroll past this. And the last thing is that Bob Blessing-Hartley, who's one of the sponsors, has put a section at the very bottom for success criteria, and trying to objectively say what we would consider a success. And the areas there are the specification, the SDK itself, the backend implementation, and portability, targeting other backends. Rama has a question.
Yes, just curious, what do you mean by cross-chain security?
I don't actually know so I didn't write this section of the proposal. I can't say what he means by cross-chain security.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, it's conceivable that you could write a compact program. I mean, one thing I could speculate is it's conceivable that you could actually write a compact program where parts of it run on different chains, and it would be a very open question of what that means. and what it means for that to be coherent.
Yeah,
But I don't.
that's
Yeah,
very interesting. So yeah,
I can't say.
okay. So I just asked because I'm a maintainer on the interoperability project Cacti, so this is something that I find interesting.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of this touches on a lot of interesting things.
Yeah. Thanks.
Are there other questions? So that is basically a walk through the proposal.
I'll raise my virtual line one more time. So I did have the same question as Rama when I read through the proposal about like what does it mean by cross-chain security?
Yeah.
Because so far all the language specifications or even the compiler or SDKs that you spoke about from a single blockchain perspective, if I'm assuming it right.
Yeah, I will. I've put in my notes to try to clarify that.
And I did have one more question. So in the proposal somewhere, like you called out that community meetings would be run in association with Midnight Network, or maybe I misread that part. Can you elaborate that? And the reason why I asked this question is, and we want all projects to succeed in a left decentralized trust. And some of the things that we have seen that that the project teams, once they adopted, that they were successful, is to make it easier for new contributors to come in and making it like providing on-time support whenever somebody is experiencing a problem, making it easier for them to reach out to project team and ask any questions, providing example implementations and maybe like speak about those example implementations and running those technology sessions or meetings, meetups, having a defined goal of like what the project team is planning to do for the next couple of years or 3 years. These are the kind of things that that have been making projects successful within LF. Now, when you say like you would have MIP, not sure if those meetings are like outside of this ecosystem, or like what's the intention behind that?
Yeah, I'm not actually sure what if that is about meetings or I don't know if you're familiar with Python's language extension process. It's called PAP. And the way it works is that anybody proposes a language feature and some discussion of a reference implementation or provides a reference implementation to prove that it can be implemented. The reference implementation is often an easy implementation in either in the CPython compiler or as a transformation on Python from Python source code to Python source code. And then there is ultimately a steering committee. There's a sort of a shepherding process where the proposal will have a sponsor that makes sure that it is well formatted and complete. There is a period where it's open for community discussion and contribution, and they'll actually create a separate channel to discuss each proposal. And then ultimately it goes in front of a steering committee that will give a thumbs up or thumbs down. And a thumbs up means that the Python community is committed to implementing it in the form of their official implementation, CPython. So I would like us to follow a similar process for new features for Compact. And what I'm suggesting is the one that we've defined as the Midnight Improvement Proposal process. It's a similar process, but it could be something else. It's not intended to be Midnight specific. Speaking about meetings, I think that is very valuable. We have a Discord server, and I have spoken to them sort of irregularly and periodically, and it's always really well received when I talk to them. They like hearing about what we're thinking about, what we're doing. They really appreciate that. So I would like to do something at a cadence of approximately monthly, where we talk about what we're doing, what we're working on, what new features are coming to a general community, so they don't have to follow a ton of GitHub issues to try to find out what's going on. For programming languages specifically, I think the roadmap is really important so that people know what features are coming in the short term and the intermediate term and what features are explicitly not coming. A language that does a really good job of this is Rust, where they publish a yearly roadmap and sort of a postmortem of whether they whether they achieved their roadmap goals from the previous year. And I'd like to try to do that for Compact as well.
So thanks, Kevin. Enrique?
Hey, hopefully last question for me. Sorry, I'm really enjoying this proposal. Another question about in the specification of the language. Don't know if you've linked it here. I was just looking at the docs. The idea of these data types and ledger data types and they being midnight specific. I wanted to understand if these data types are like an extension on the actual backend or they're added to the actual specification. It seems to me that you need to define when you create one of these contracts the ledger types that you want to store on the ledger where you're pinning obviously the proof. Can you expand just a little bit on that, or maybe just send me a link to where I could read more?
So right now, until we open source the repository, hopefully in the next week and a half, you can't see the implementation, which is unfortunate. I will say that I wasn't entirely accurate when I said that the compiler didn't know about the ledger backend. The one thing that it does know about is the type structure of the ledger. And so
Right.
to target a different backend, we would have to find a way to abstract the compiler over an implementation of a type system so that you could provide your own type system that was potentially different.
Right. That's what I wanted to understand. Okay.
Yeah, so the ledger types are they are in the standard library, but the compiler has special knowledge about them. They're, in a sense, they're built-in types of the language, and we would have to find a way to abstract that and be clear about that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll wait for the code to be open source. I want to dig into it a bit more. Thanks.
Thank you, Enrique. Any questions to Kevin or the project team from other TAC members? I'll take that as a no. So Kevin, thanks for presenting the project to TAC and also for the proposal. And I see it is very detailed. I anticipate a few more questions coming from TAC over the GitHub medium, and I would expect project team to respond to those questions.
Sounds good.
And the reason why I'm not opening it for voting right away is because we had few opens in this meeting that the project team would be responding back via GitHub in about a week and a half. So if that is correct understanding, we can open up for voting in the next TAC meeting, hopefully. Otherwise, if otherwise, like any other TAC members have any other opinion that we should open up for voting right away, I'm open for it.
That sounds good. If you have questions, I would ask that you do ask them explicitly on the GitHub issue, just so we don't lose track of them and can make sure that we address them all.
Sounds good. Enrique?
Yeah, I would be in favor of having access to code before we vote, having an ability to see the repo. That's just a personal opinion. I know if other people feel like that, but I feel like it would help me review better the proposal.
Sounds good. Thanks, Enrique.
Yeah, and that is not unprecedented. We've had TAC members added to private repos before votes before, but hopefully this is open source before the vote.
I hope so, but I don't want to promise that. I can get you access to the repository. So offline, I need just a list of GitHub IDs to ask for access.
All right. So thank you again for the proposal. And that brings to our next agenda item for today, which is to review Loch Ness annual report. Rama and Char, I'm not sure if we have an update that we should discuss in this meeting.
I don't think so. I actually haven't looked at the thread yet, but I did ask Dennis last week, and I mentioned this in last week's call as well. He said he's busy with other things, but he'll get to this soon. So I guess we'll have to wait for him. I'll try to remind him again, maybe next week.
Sounds good, Rama. Thank you. So with that, we came to the end of today's agenda items for discussions. So we do have quarterly reports pending for review from TAC members, and we also have project teams which are yet to submit their reports. So just another quick reminder before we end the session today. With that, I guess we wrap today's meeting and we yield back a few minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.